I never believed in God, or anything related to fate or spirituality. To me, life was simply a series of random events, and if anything determined a person's destiny, it was their own efforts and choices. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't poor either. I worked as a warehouse manager for a transportation company in Chicago, a job that paid the bills but had nothing to be proud of. My life was a familiar cycle. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, then sleep. A monotonous, routine repeating day after day, year after year. What frustrated me the most wasn't the boredom, it was the injustice. I used to think that if I worked hard, I'd have a better life. But reality didn't work that way. I had seen too many lucky people no smarter than me, no more hard-working than me, but they drove luxury cars and lived in million-dollar homes. Meanwhile, I was still struggling with my paycheck. I didn't believe in luck, and I certainly didn't believe in fate. I only believed that the world was inherently unfair. That day was just like any other, a cold December afternoon. I finished my shift, shut down my computer, threw on my coat, and left the warehouse. Snowflakes drifted down, and the streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. I pulled my collar up, shoved my hands into my pockets, and walked briskly toward the parking lot. Winters in Chicago were always brutal, but I had lived with them for years. What I didn't know was that in just a few minutes I would never feel the cold again. The pain came without warning. Just as I was about to step onto the opposite sidewalk, an invisible hammer struck my chest. A searing pain, so intense that I immediately froze, gripping the nearby wall for support, trying to breathe. But the more I tried, the harder it became. It felt like a massive weight was crushing my lungs. The world around me started to spin. My vision blurred. My legs gave out, and then I collapsed onto the pavement. I had no idea how long I lay there. Maybe a few seconds, maybe a few minutes. I heard hurried footsteps, someone shouting, a woman's panicked voice calling for an ambulance. But then, something strange happened. The pain in my chest vanished completely. I opened my eyes, and I saw myself. Not in a mirror. I saw myself, my body, lying lifeless on the ground, eyes staring blankly at the sky. I stood there, looking down at my own corpse, completely conscious but unable to comprehend what was happening. Had I died? No. That wasn't possible. This had to be a nightmare. I tried to scream at the people around me, but no one heard me. I reached out to touch a young woman kneeling beside my body, but my hand passed right through her as if I were nothing but air. Panic. Fear. I couldn't make sense of any of it. Had I really died? No. I didn't believe in this. I didn't believe in souls or the afterlife. But before I could process anything further, an invisible force pulled me away. Everything around me went dark. No more streets, no more cars, no more falling snow. Just an endless empty void. I could no longer feel my body. No arms, no legs. Only consciousness. Where was I? What was this place? In the distance, a light appeared. At first, it was just a tiny speck, but it grew larger with every passing second. I felt an overwhelming force drawing me toward it, as if an unseen hand was pulling me in. I tried to resist, but it was futile. The light consumed me. And then I heard a voice. Not a normal voice. It didn't echo, nor did it come from any particular direction. It was everywhere. It was inside me. Mark. I froze. Mark, I know you have many questions. I wanted to say something, but I realized I had no mouth to speak, no body. Yet somehow I knew that God, if this really was him, could hear me. Am I dead? There was no immediate response. Instead, the light in front of me began to shift and swirl, slowly taking the shape of a human figure. A tall man, draped in a magnificent white robe. No wings, no glowing halo, but an undeniable presence of power radiated from him. I didn't need to ask. I knew who he was. We have much to discuss, Mark. And just like that, my conversation with God began. I couldn't take my eyes off the light in front of me. It was no longer just an undefined glow. It had a presence, a power I couldn't comprehend. It had no definite shape, no face or limbs, but I could feel it more clearly than anything I had ever known. A being, something beyond human. Then the voice spoke again. Mark. My heart, if I even still had one, tightened. My name. A familiar sound, but when spoken by this voice, it carried a weight I couldn't explain. I know you have many questions. My mouth fell open, or at least I felt like it did. Am I dead? The question escaped me without thought. Never in my life had I imagined I would actually ask such a thing. Death was always something that happened to other people, not me. Your physical body has ceased to function, but your soul remains. My soul. I had never believed in such a thing, but standing here in this endless void, how could I deny it? I let out a dry laugh, a laugh without sound. A soul? I've never believed in that. I know. The reply was gentle but firm. No judgment, no reproach, just a simple fact. A fact that he had always known. I clenched my fists, or at least I felt as though I did. I could still think, still feel, but I no longer had a physical form. I was just awareness, consciousness. I took a deep breath, or imagined that I did, before speaking. Why was I never able to be rich? The question spilled out before I could stop it. I had spent my entire life wondering about this. I had worked hard, struggled more than so many others, yet I had nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, others, people who seemed to do nothing, had everything. The light in front of me pulsed slightly as if considering. Do you think wealth comes only from effort? I frowned. Doesn't it? Effort is only a small part of it. Wealth depends on many factors: karma, personal destiny, and the lessons one must learn in this life. I blinked. Karma, I repeated, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. Every action you take, every thought you have, every choice you make generates energy. That energy does not disappear. It comes back to you in one form or another. I fell silent. If this was true, then everything I had believed was wrong. I had thought the world was random. I had believed that fate had no meaning. But if what he was saying was real, then everything had a reason. A chill ran through me. If a soul could even feel cold. I had always been bitter, resentful of what I saw as injustice. I had always thought the world was unfair and carried that frustration with me every day. But if what he said was true, had I brought misfortune upon myself? I took a deep breath, at least I felt like I did. Then, how was the universe created? God was silent for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. You know about the Big Bang? I nodded. The Big Bang is part of the truth, but it was not the absolute beginning. There were existences before it, and after this universe there will be others. Are you saying there are multiple universes? Exactly. Each universe has its own laws, its own beings, and not all universes are the same. I felt overwhelmed. What about humans? I asked. Where did we come from? Humans are part of evolution, but not just biological evolution. There was spiritual intervention. The human soul is not merely the product of DNA, but a spark from a higher energy source. I had always thought these things were just superstition, but standing here before this being, I couldn't deny it anymore. One last question formed in my mind. Then why did I die? God did not answer right away. The light around him seemed to soften, becoming warmer. Your death was not random. You are the chosen one. I stiffened. The chosen one? Because you had no faith, and I want you to understand. I didn't know what to say, but deep inside, I knew that whatever came next would change everything I had ever believed. I didn't know how long I had been standing there, frozen by what God had just said. The chosen one? Me? A man without faith, who never believed in God, never believed in souls or anything beyond the tangible world, but I had no time to argue. God spoke again, his voice calm as ever, yet carrying an indescribable weight. World War III will happen. A chill ran down my spine, even though I no longer had a physical body to feel temperature. World War III? But why? When? The year 2028. But this will not be a war of weapons. I frowned. Not a war of weapons? Then what kind of war? The light surrounding God pulsed slightly, as if the words he was about to say carried immense gravity. An economic war. I held my breath, trying to grasp the meaning of that. A war not fought with guns and bombs, but with currency, finance, and policies that could plunge the world into chaos. That, in some ways, was even more terrifying. Who will start it? I whispered, though I already had a sinking feeling. Donald Trump. I closed my eyes. That name had sparked countless controversies over the years, but the idea that he could ignite a global economic war, that was something I had never considered. But he will also be the one to end it. I snapped my eyes open. What do you mean? Trump will start the war, but he will also end it. How is that possible? God did not answer right away. A silence settled between us, as if he was allowing me to process this. Then he continued, his voice unchanged but carrying an absolute certainty. When the war begins, the world will face consequences unlike anything before. Images flashed through my mind, once bustling cities turning desolate, stores shuttered, people wandering the streets with hollow eyes. Famine and unemployment will spread worldwide. The poorest nations will suffer the most. Society will fall into chaos. Many will lose faith. My chest tightened. I had seen economic crises before, but I had never imagined something this catastrophic. I pictured families with nothing to eat, children crying in desperation, people so hopeless they would do anything just to survive. But what can humanity do to prepare? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. They must prepare financially, spiritually, and morally. Those who save, those who adapt, will have a better chance of surviving. But more importantly, those with compassion, those who know how to share, will be the strongest in these difficult times. I fell silent. Compassion. I had seen so much selfishness in this world, people looking out only for themselves. Was I one of them? I wasn't sure. And what about me? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. You have a mission. You must tell this story. I froze. But who would believe me? I'm just an ordinary man. I never believed in God. Never believed in anything supernatural. Who would take my word for it? Not everyone will believe, but that is not important. Your mission is to speak the truth. Let those who can hear, hear. Let those who can understand, understand. I felt an invisible weight, pressing down on my shoulders, a pair of shoulders I no longer had, yet I could feel the crushing responsibility. I had to deliver this message. I had to tell the world what I had seen. But how? You have one final choice. God's voice became quieter, yet no less powerful. You can stay here, remain in the spirit world, or you can return. I widened my eyes. I can go back? Yes. But remember, if you return, your mission is to share this message. You will face doubt, ridicule, even isolation. But that is your purpose. I didn't know what to say. Stay here in this place of absolute peace, or return to the mortal world where I would face endless challenges? I looked at the radiant light before me. I couldn't see God's face, but I could feel his silent anticipation. I knew this decision would change everything. And then I took a deep breath, or at least, I imagined I did. I will go back. I felt as if I were being pulled back abruptly, as if falling into an endless abyss. A blinding light engulfed me, and then suddenly everything disappeared. I gasped for air, my lungs filling as if I had just escaped from a terrifying nightmare. The steady beeping of machines echoed around me, and the harsh white lights overwhelmed my vision. I lay there, on a hospital bed, my head spinning. A doctor stood beside me, eyes wide with shock. This is unbelievable. He was clinically dead for several minutes. I heard them talking about me, but all I could truly feel was my own existence, back in this body, back in this world. But I was no longer the person I used to be. In the days that followed, I tried to recount my experience to my family and friends. But their expressions said it all: skepticism, concern, even pity. Maybe it was just a hallucination from oxygen deprivation, my younger brother said, shaking his head. Or a side effect of the medication. Are you sure? My wife asked, worry evident in her voice. I looked at them, trying to remain calm. It wasn't a hallucination. I really met God. He spoke to me, told me what was going to happen in the future. My mother sighed, placing a hand over mine as if to comfort me. You went through something terrifying, but maybe you should rest more and not dwell on it too much. I could see they didn't believe me, but I didn't stop. I began seeking out spiritual communities, those who had faith in God. There, I shared my story. At a small gathering in a local church, I stood before a group of people and began to speak. Died. But my soul did not disappear. I saw the light. I met God, and He warned me about what is to come. A middle-aged man interrupted. Are you sure? How do you know it wasn't just a dream? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my frustration in check. I can't explain it scientifically, but I know it was real. God spoke of an economic war that will take place in 2028, and we must prepare. An older woman crossed her arms, skepticism in her eyes. If God wanted to warn the world, why would He choose you? I was silent for a moment before answering. Maybe because I was once a man without faith, but God showed me the truth, and I must share it. Some people looked at me with interest. Others shook their heads. A young man asked, Do you have any proof? How do we know you're not making this up? I had no proof. All I had was my story. But I remained firm. Look at what's happening. Prices are rising, inflation is climbing, jobs are disappearing. This is just the beginning. As time passed, the warning signs that God had spoken of began to appear. Prices skyrocketed, inflation surged. Companies laid off workers in droves. I saw news reports filled with talks of an impending financial crisis, grim predictions for the global economy. Those who had mocked me now began to waver. One day I received a message from someone who had doubted me at the gathering. I don't know what to think anymore. You were right about the prices and unemployment. Can we talk? I smiled slightly. Maybe. Finally, someone was starting to listen. I wondered if humanity could change its fate, if everyone united, if we helped each other instead of scrambling for wealth at any cost. Could we avoid the disaster God had foreseen? But I had no answer. All I knew was that I had to keep speaking, keep telling this story, no matter how many people believed me or not. And so I went from city to city, from forum to forum, spreading the message of the future that I had witnessed. The story is not over, or perhaps it has only just begun.